The corridor outside room 412 was the color hospitals always were at 5 in the morning, a grey that hadn't decided yet if it belonged to the night or the day. Adrian Voss stood with his back to the door, his suit jacket gone, his sleeves pushed up past forearms that hadn't slept, and in his coat pocket the Calder papers sat folded into quarters. Softened at the creases from being taken out and put back so many times. Through the door he could hear the monitor keeping his mother's heartbeat on a schedule she hadn't agreed to. He looked down the hall to the nurse's station, where Naomi Reeves was charting with the particular stillness of someone who had learned, a long time ago, how to be calm on purpose. He crossed the floor toward her. His hand came up before his voice did, reaching for hers on the counter, and whatever he meant to ask her rose in his throat and stopped there, unfinished, because the door behind him had just opened, and a nurse was saying his name in the tone that meant come now. A person can spend a lifetime rehearsing the words for a moment and still lose them the instant it arrives. 6 weeks before that morning, Naomi Reeves had never heard of Adrian Voss. She had heard of Eleanor Voss, though, the way most people in the city eventually did if they paid attention to skylines, the woman who'd built a small drafting firm into Voss and Klein, the one whose name was on the plaque outside 3 hospital wings and a river walk downtown. The hospice agency sent Naomi's file over on a Tuesday, cardiac, end-stage, home care transitioning to palliative, and Naomi read it twice before her shift because the notes said the patient was sharp as glass and did not tolerate being spoken to like she was already gone. The house was the kind of quiet that money bought, and Adrian met her in the front hall like a man interviewing a stranger for a job he didn't want filled. He was courteous in the clipped way people are when courtesy is the only emotion they can afford to show. He told her the schedule, the medications, the specialists, and when she asked if she could speak to his mother directly instead of through him, something in his jaw shifted, the smallest concession. Eleanor Voss, propped against pillows in a sunroom that had been converted for her, looked at Naomi for a long moment before she said a word. "You're not going to talk to me like I'm furniture." Eleanor fixed her with a look that made the sentence something other than a question. "No, ma'am. I talk to people like people. Furniture doesn't talk back, and you strike me as the kind who will." Eleanor laughed, a short, dry sound that cost her, and from the doorway Adrian's expression cracked open for exactly 1 second before he closed it again. Naomi noticed. She was paid to notice things. The weeks that followed had their own rhythm. Naomi came at 7, checked vitals, managed the parade of medications that were less about curing anything now and more about comfort, and in the gaps she learned the house the way she learned every house she worked in, by its objects. A drafting table nobody used anymore in the study, a photograph of a much younger Eleanor in a hard hat on a job site, laughing at something outside the frame. A single framed photo of a man Naomi assumed was Adrian's father, dead long enough that his image had gone slightly formal, slightly distant, the way old photographs do. At home in the apartment she shared with her son, Naomi had her own object. A wedding ring, too small now for her finger, worn instead on a thin chain under her shirt. Where it sat against her sternum, and nobody but her ever knew it was there. Malik was 8, sharp the way only children who've had to grow up fast are sharp, and some evenings he asked her questions she deflected with the practiced ease of a woman who had built deflecting into a second profession. "Where's Dad's picture? Why don't we keep it out anymore?" She always found something else to talk about. He always let her. For now. Grief does not announce itself as grief. Sometimes it wears the shape of a schedule kept too carefully, a drawer kept closed. One evening in the 3rd week, Naomi found Adrian in the study long after his mother had gone to sleep, sitting at the unused drafting table with the desk lamp throwing a small yellow circle around his hands and nothing else. She'd come in to collect a chart she'd left behind and stopped in the doorway instead. Adrian didn't turn around. "She used to make me sit here and copy her drawings when I was a kid. Said if I couldn't draw a straight line by hand I had no business running a firm someday, even on a computer. I hated it. Do you still hate it? I don't know what I feel about most of this house anymore." He finally looked up. "You ask people direct questions. Nobody in my life asks direct questions. They ask around things. I grew up around people who didn't have time for around." Naomi shrugged. "You learn to just ask." He studied her for a moment in that unhurried way she was starting to recognize. The way of a man cataloguing something instead of merely looking at it. Can I ask you one then, direct? You can ask. I get to decide if I answer. Fair. He nodded at the photograph on the wall, the formal, distant man who had once been Eleanor's husband. You've been in this house a month, and you've never once asked me about him. Everybody asks about him. I don't ask people about their dead unless they bring it up first. It's rude to make somebody grieve on your schedule instead of theirs. Something shifted in his face, quick and unguarded, gone before it fully arrived. My father died, thinking this company was the only thing he'd ever built worth keeping. I used to think I agreed with him. He looked back down at his hands on the table, empty of any pencil, any drawing. I don't know when I stopped. Naomi didn't answer that. She wasn't paid to, and there was a version of this conversation that led somewhere she had no intention of letting it lead, not with a man whose family had a marriage contract sitting in a lawyer's file drawer somewhere with someone else's name on it. She picked up the chart she'd come for. Get some sleep, Mr. Voss. Your mother notices when you haven't. Adrian. He held her gaze a beat too long. You've been in my house a month. Get some sleep, Adrian. She left before either of them could turn the moment into something it wasn't ready to be yet, though she thought about the yellow circle of that desk lamp, the whole drive home, longer than she planned to admit to herself. The cardiac event came on a Thursday, fast and without the decency of warning, and Naomi was the one who called it in. Who kept Eleanor talking on the way to the ambulance, because talking, she'd learned, kept people tethered to the room a little longer than silence did. At the hospital, the cardiologist used the word weeks, not months. Adrian stood very still when he heard it, the stillness of a man doing math he didn't want the answer to. Naomi found him 20 minutes later in the family waiting area, sitting with his elbows on his knees and his tie loosened past the point of looking like a man who ran a company. She didn't sit down right away. You don't have to be composed in front of me. Naomi kept her voice even. I'm not billing you for the version of you that has it together. I don't know how to do it any other way. I've been doing it this way since I was 12. Try anyway. Just for a minute. He looked up at her, and whatever had been holding his face together slipped, just slightly, just enough that she saw the boy underneath the boardroom manner. The one who used to hate copying drawings at a desk his mother made him sit at. Weeks, he turned the word over like it belonged to someone else. They said weeks like it was a number I was supposed to be grateful for. Like it's generous. It's not generous. It's just a number. You're allowed to hate it. I keep thinking about all the things I haven't told her, things I meant to say for years and kept putting off because there was always a board meeting, always a deadline, always some version of later. His hands were laced together, knuckles pale. I don't know if there's enough weeks left for all of it. Naomi's voice was gentle but certain. Then say the important ones first. You don't get all of it, nobody does. You get what you say before the room goes quiet, and that's the whole inheritance, no matter how much money is sitting in a trust somewhere. She sat down beside him then, not touching him, just present in the chair next to his. I'm sorry. For what it's worth from someone who's paid to be in this room, it's worth something. Adrian didn't look away from her. It's worth more than you probably know. They sat like that for a while, saying nothing else, until a nurse came to tell them Eleanor was asking for him. Eleanor, once she was stable enough to hold court again, made her position clear from the hospital bed with the particular authority of a woman who had run boardrooms for 30 years and did not intend to stop now that she was dying in one of her own hospital wings. Eleanor fixed Adrian with a look that had ended board meetings. I want to meet her. The one you actually love. Not the colder girl. I've known about that arrangement since before you did, and I signed off on it for the company's sake, not because I thought it would make you happy. I don't have time left to pretend I care more about shares than I care about my son being happy. Bring me someone real. Adrian, once. That's what I want. Adrian didn't answer. There was no one to bring. The colder situation, as the board called it in the sanded-down language boards used for things they'd rather not name plainly, was this. Years earlier, when Voss and Klein had nearly gone under, Marcus Calder's capital had kept the doors open, and the terms of that rescue had included a marriage clause tucked into a family trust, an engagement between Adrian and Marcus's daughter Vivian that would consolidate voting shares at the moment of Eleanor's death and keep the company out of a hostile buyer's hands. It had never been about love. It had been about survival, arranged when Adrian was young enough not to have a vote in his own future, and it had simply never been undone. Now Marcus wanted it finalized before the board's quarterly vote, and Eleanor's declining health had turned his timeline urgent. He called Adrian's office twice a day. He used the word optics more than a man should ever have to use that word about his own daughter's engagement. Adrian found Naomi in the hallway outside the ICU 2 nights later, past visiting hours. Past the point where either of them should still have been there. Adrian didn't waste time on preamble. "I need to ask you something that isn't part of your job. Ask it anyway. My mother wants to meet someone I love before she dies. There isn't anyone. There's a woman my family's business is contractually obligated to have me marry, and my mother has never met her without seeing straight through the arrangement, because that's what she does. She sees through things. I don't want the last real memory she has of me to be a business transaction wearing an engagement ring." He said the rest of it fast, like a man ripping a bandage off before he could think better of it. "I'll pay you. 1 visit. Hold my hand, let her see something that looks like it's real, and then you never have to do it again." Naomi looked at him for a long moment. "No, I know how it sounds. It sounds like you want me to lie to a dying woman for money. I've spent 15 years making sure people get to leave this world without being lied to. I'm not about to start now, and I'm definitely not going to be paid for it." She turned to go. He didn't stop her, which she respected more than she expected to. It was 3 days later, watching Eleanor's hands shake trying to hold a coffee cup she insisted on holding herself, that something in Naomi's calculation shifted. Not because of Adrian, because of Eleanor, who had never once, in 6 weeks, spoken to Naomi like she was staff instead of a person, and who was asking for one thing, one small mercy, on her way out of the world. In the hallway, on her own terms, unpaid, Naomi finally gave him an answer. 1 visit. "And I'm not performing anything I don't feel like a person could feel. I'll be kind to your mother, because I already am. Anything past that is yours to sell, not mine." Kindness offered with strings attached is a transaction wearing a nicer coat. Only the unconditional kind survives contact with an actual room. The visit went better than either of them had braced for, which was its own kind of problem. Eleanor lit up in a way the nurses on the floor commented on for days afterward, held Naomi's hand in both of hers, told stories about Adrian as a boy that made him wince and Naomi laugh, and at the end of it asked, without any performance in her voice at all, to see them again. Vivian Calder came to the hospital the following week, and she was not what Naomi expected. She was tired in the specific way of someone who has spent her whole life being a term in someone else's contract. Vivian found Naomi alone by the vending machines. "I know what this is. I'm not angry at you. I've been trying to get out of this arrangement since I was 22. My father doesn't hear no. Maybe he'll hear it from a room he can't control." She almost smiled. "Good luck, I mean that." Adrian found Naomi afterward in the cafeteria, at a table by the window with a coffee she wasn't drinking either, and he sat down across from her without asking if he could. "Thank you. For today. I didn't do it for you. I know. That's the part I keep turning over." He turned his cup in a slow circle on the table, not drinking from it. "Vivian talked to you. She told me. She's not what I expected. She never wanted this either. Her father decided her life the same year mine decided mine, and neither of us had a vote." He looked up. "I keep thinking about what you said in the hallway, about lying to my mother for money. I remember what I said. You were right to say it." He was quiet a moment. "I don't know how to do this the honest way. I've spent my whole adult life doing things because a contract said to, or a board said to, or my mother said to, and somewhere in there I stopped checking whether I wanted to. Today, in that room, holding your hand, I wanted to. That's the first thing I've wanted in a long time that nobody assigned me." Naomi felt the careful architecture of her own boundaries shift half an inch, no more than that, but she felt it. "That doesn't make it simple. I know. You've still got a signature on a contract with someone else's name on it. I know that too." He met her eyes. "I'm not asking you to fix that. I'm telling you I noticed something today I don't have a category for yet, and I'd rather tell you the truth about that than lie to you the way I asked you to lie for me. That's the first honest thing you've said to me since I met you. Feels different than I expected." Naomi stood, gathering the coffee she still hadn't touched, Good, get used to it. It's the only version of you I'm interested in knowing. She left him there with his own cup going cold, and she thought about the conversation the whole way to pick up Malik from his after-school program, longer than she'd admit to anyone, including herself. At home that night, Malik found the chain around Naomi's neck while she was falling asleep on the couch. The ring slipped loose from her collar. He held it up without asking permission first, the way children hold up things they've decided are theirs to ask about. Whose is this? Your dad's. Why don't you wear it on your hand? Naomi took it back gently and tucked it under her shirt again. Because some things you carry close instead of out where people can see them. Doesn't mean you love them less. Malik considered this with the seriousness of an 8-year-old judge. That's not really an answer. Naomi didn't argue the point. No, it's not. Marcus Calder escalated the following week, informed by someone on staff, or by Vivian herself out of exhaustion, that Adrian had been seen with a woman who was not his daughter. He demanded the engagement be made official and public at the company's spring gala, 3 weeks out, before the board vote. Before, he said without saying it, Eleanor could die and complicate the share transfer with sentiment. He told Adrian that Eleanor's legacy deserved a company that survived her, not a scandal that buried it. Adrian came to Naomi with the gala invitation still in his hand like it weighed more than paper should. He wants a public announcement, in front of 400 people. My mother will be there if she's strong enough, and if she sees me announce an engagement to Vivian after everything after you, I don't know what that does to her in the time she has left. Then don't do it. If I don't, Calder pulls his support before the vote and the company goes to a buyer who'll gut it for the real estate. Everything my mother built. So ask her which one she'd rather have. Ask Eleanor, right now, which matters more, the building or the truth. I can't put that choice in front of a dying woman. You'd rather make it for her. I'd rather she not spend her last weeks watching her son destroy the one thing she has left standing. His voice cracked on the word destroy, and he caught it, pulled it back under control the way she'd watched him do a dozen times now. The practiced discipline of a man who'd been taught that feeling things out loud was a kind of failure. You don't understand what that company is to her. I understand exactly what it is to her. It's the reason she almost died, not knowing if her son ever got to choose his own life. You keep talking like the choice is the company or nothing. There's a third option where you tell Calder no and let the chips land where they land. And if the company goes under, if 400 employees lose their jobs because I decided honesty mattered more than a contract my mother herself signed, then that's a real cost. And you get to decide if you're willing to pay it. But don't dress up doing what Marcus Calder wants as doing what's right by your mother. Those aren't the same thing, and you know it, or you wouldn't look like that right now. So you're going to let her die, watching you sell yourself for a building. The words came out harder than she'd meant them, and she didn't take them back. Duty and cowardice can wear the exact same face, viewed from far enough away. Naomi sat with it for 2 days before she made the decision that was hers alone to make, that no one asked her to make, that cost her something the moment she opened her mouth. She went to Eleanor's room on a quiet afternoon, when Adrian was at the office fighting a battle she wasn't part of, and she sat down in the chair by the bed and told her the truth. I'm not his fiancée. I never have been. He asked me to come see you once, so you wouldn't have to meet the woman his family's contract says he has to marry. I said yes, because I liked you. Not because I loved him. I don't know what I feel about him, if I'm honest, and it's gotten complicated in a way I didn't plan for. But you deserve to know what's true before you're not here to ask anymore. Eleanor was quiet long enough that Naomi thought she might have made a terrible mistake. Eleanor took her time answering. I know. You knew? I've run boardrooms for 30 years, Naomi. I know a performance when I see one. What I didn't know was whether you'd ever tell me the truth. And now you have, and that tells me more about you than the performance ever did. She reached for Naomi's hand, and this time there was nothing rehearsed in either grip. Thank you for not letting me die on a lie. That's rarer than you'd think, even in families. I might lose the case over this. The agency doesn't love its nurses getting personally involved. Then I'll call your agency myself and tell them you did the one thing I actually asked for. Eleanor's eyes were wet, and she didn't bother hiding it. Go home, sit with whatever this is. Don't let my son's mess make the decision for you. Odessa, the housekeeper who'd worked for the Voss family for 22 years and had opinions about all of them, found Naomi in the kitchen afterward, staring at a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. Odessa didn't bother with a greeting. You told her. It wasn't a question either. Everyone in this family seemed to speak that way. I told her. Good. That woman spent her whole life around people managing her instead of talking to her. You gave her something nobody else in this house had the nerve to give her. Odessa sat down across from her. You want to know what I think, or you want me to mind my business? I never get a real choice with that question. I think you're not scared of lying to Eleanor. I think you're scared of what happens if this stops being pretend. You've been carrying that ring under your shirt so long, you've convinced yourself the space next to it has to stay empty out of loyalty. Malik doesn't need you loyal to a memory. He needs you happy in a way he can see. Odessa stood, done with the conversation the way people are done when they've said the true thing and don't intend to soften it after. That's my business now. You can go back to minding yours. She told Adrian herself that same evening, before anyone else could tell him for her, because she'd decided somewhere in the last 2 days that she wasn't going to be a secret he found out about secondhand. She found him in the hospital parking garage, keys still in his hand. I told your mother the truth. About us. That there isn't an us. Not the kind she thinks. Not officially. He went very still. You told her. She already knew. She's known for weeks. But she'd never heard either of us say it plainly, and I wasn't going to let her die on a story I helped write. Do you understand what this could do to the merger if it gets back to Calder? I understand exactly what it could do. I did it anyway. Naomi held her ground, arms crossed, refusing to make herself smaller in front of the anger she could see him trying not to aim at her. I didn't do it to hurt you, Adrian. I did it because your mother asked me for one honest thing in 6 weeks of people managing her, and I was the only person in her life willing to give it to her. If that costs you the company, that's a cost you signed up for the day you asked a stranger to lie to your dying mother, instead of just telling her the truth yourself. That's not fair. Naomi didn't soften it. No. It's not. Fair would have been you telling her the first week she asked. I just ran out of patience, waiting for you to do it. He didn't answer for a long moment, his jaw working, the keys still gripped tight enough to whiten his knuckles. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its edge. I'm not angry at you. You sounded angry. I'm angry that you had the nerve to do the thing I should have done 6 weeks ago, and it took you 2 days to work up to it. He looked away, toward the concrete pillars, the fluorescent hum overhead. I don't know what happens now. To the company, to Calder, to any of it. Neither do I. Naomi held his gaze. But your mother knows the truth. And she's not sorry she asked for it. That has to count for something, even if the rest of it falls apart. He nodded, once, and didn't reach for her hand, and she didn't offer it. And they stood in that garage for a while, longer than either of them needed to, saying nothing else at all. The truth reached Marcus Calder within the day, whether from Vivian or from someone on the hospital board with a financial interest in the merger, and he did not take it quietly. He called Adrian's office and told him the deal was off, the shares would go to the highest bidder, and that Eleanor's legacy would be remembered as the company that collapsed the year its heir chased a nurse instead of his obligations. He said it. Adrian told Naomi later, without a trace of doubt, that he was in the right. That same night, Eleanor's heart, already exhausted past what any medication could manage, began to fail in earnest. The doctors used words this time that left no room for weeks. Hours, one of them said. Maybe a day. And Adrian sat in the hallway outside the ICU, with the Calder papers still folded in his pocket, useless now, and no clear idea which loss to grieve first. Some nights ask a person to choose which ruin to face, and offer no version where nothing is lost. By 5 the next morning, the corridor outside room 412 had gone the grey it always went before dawn decided which direction to fall, and Adrian stood with his back to the door because he couldn't make himself go back in yet. The Calder papers sat folded in his pocket, and inside the room the monitor was keeping his mother's heartbeat on a schedule that was running out. He crossed the floor to where Naomi stood at the nurse's station. I don't have the company anymore. I might not have anything left by the end of the week except a signature on a sale agreement. I came out here because I can't walk back into that room by myself, and I don't have the right to ask you for anything after everything I've already asked. But I'm asking anyway." His hand came up, reaching for hers on the counter, and this time the words didn't stop in his throat. "Hold my hand and pretend." His voice broke on the last word. "Just for a few minutes. Pretend this is real, so I don't have to walk in there alone." Naomi took his hand. "I'm not pretending." She didn't let go. They went in together. Eleanor was barely conscious, her breathing shallow and spaced with long pauses that made the room hold its own breath in between them. But when Adrian sat down on one side of the bed and Naomi on the other, still holding his hand, Eleanor's eyes opened partway, found the two of them, and something in her face settled, the particular peace of a woman seeing the one thing she'd actually asked for. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her hand found Adrian's free one, and for a while the three of them sat in a silence that had nothing false left inside it. Eleanor Voss died a little after 7 that morning, with the window going gold behind the blinds, her son on one side, and a woman who owed her nothing but had given her the truth anyway on the other. Naomi did not let go of Adrian's hand through the doctor's quiet pronouncement, or the nurse's gentle unhooking of the monitor, or the long call to the funeral home that Adrian could not make himself make until she made it with him. They sat afterward in the small family room down the hall, the one hospitals keep for exactly this purpose. With bad coffee neither of them drank, and a box of tissues neither of them had touched yet. Adrian looked wrecked in a way Naomi hadn't seen on him before, the discipline finally gone out of his shoulders. "You never let go. In there." His voice was rough. "I noticed. Even when it stopped being about her. I noticed too. What happens now? With us? With whatever this is." He turned the empty coffee cup in his hands, the same nervous circle she'd watched him make in the cafeteria weeks ago. "I don't have a contract to offer you. I might not have a company by the end of the month. I don't even know if I have the right to ask you to stay after everything I put you through to get here. You didn't put me through anything I didn't choose to walk into. I could have said no in that hallway 6 weeks ago, and I didn't." Naomi set her own cup down. "I'm not offering to fix your company, Adrian. I've got a son who needs picking up in 2 hours and a job I might not have next week, and none of that changes because your mother died holding my hand. I'm not asking you to fix anything." "Then what are you asking?" "If I can call you. Tomorrow, not because my mother asked for it, and not because Calder's watching. Just because I want to hear your voice and there's no one left in this building to perform for." Naomi considered him for a long moment, the tired lines around his eyes, the hand still faintly shaking from 6 hours of holding someone through the end of her life. "You can call me." She held up a hand before he could look too relieved. "But you're not calling a fiancé. You're calling a woman who happens to have liked you before any of this, and who's going to need you to earn the rest of it slowly, on purpose, no pretending anywhere in it. I can do slowly. We'll see." The will was read 11 days later, and it contained one clause dated 6 weeks before Eleanor's death. Added quietly, without announcement, the week after a nurse had sat by her bed and told her something true. It voided the marriage clause in the Calder Trust entirely, converting Marcus Calder's shares into non-voting instruments effective at her death, and it left Adrian full control of Voss and Klein with a single handwritten line attached to the document: "Choose the truth every time." It cost you less than the lie would have. Marcus Calder threatened litigation for exactly 9 days before his own lawyers told him the clause was airtight and had been for years. Drafted, it turned out, not in a moment of dying sentiment, but in careful daylight, by a woman who had apparently been planning her son's freedom longer than anyone had given her credit for. He came to the boardroom himself for the final vote, uninvited, and stood at the back with his lawyers while Adrian addressed the table. When the floor opened for comment, Marcus spoke first. "You'll lose the real estate play. Without my shares behind you, this company survives on paper and nothing else." Adrian didn't blink. "We'll survive on the work, the way my mother built it the first time, before your capital ever touched it. I'd rather run something smaller and honest than something large and owned by a man who tried to buy my life to save his investment. Your mother would have taken the deal. My mother wrote the clause that ended the deal. Marcus, read it again if you don't believe me." Adrian didn't raise his voice, and that, more than anything he could have shouted, seemed to land harder than a shout would have. "She saw this coming before either of us did." Marcus had nothing to say to that. He left before the vote was even called, and the board, when it came down to it, voted to keep the company independent, restructured. Smaller in its ambitions for the real estate arm but larger, Adrian said afterward, in every way that mattered to him now. The merger that survived the wreckage looked nothing like the one Marcus had wanted. Terms renegotiated within the month on nobody's marriage and nobody's inheritance, just capital and contracts, the ordinary kind. Vivian Calder, released from an arrangement she'd spent a decade trying to escape, sent Naomi a single note not long after that read simply, "Thank you for making the room too honest for the rest of it to survive." Naomi found Adrian in the empty boardroom afterward, tie loosened, staring at the table where he'd just refused to sell his mother's company. "You could have taken the deal." Naomi studied his face, kept everything simpler. "Simpler isn't the same as better. You taught me that in a hallway I didn't want to be standing in." He came around the table. "I keep thinking about what my mother wrote. Choose the truth every time." "Are you going to?" "I already did. Twice, now in front of people who could have made me pay for it." He held out his hand, not asking for anything this time, just offering it. No pretending required. Naomi took it anyway, and this time neither of them let go for a reason that had nothing to do with anyone watching. Adrian did not sell the company. He kept the drafting table in his mother's old study exactly as it had been. Making room for something new rarely requires setting down what came before it. More often, it just means letting someone else help carry the weight for a while. Naomi kept her job. The agency, after a phone call Eleanor had placed from her hospital bed weeks before her death, decided that a nurse who told a dying woman the truth was not a liability, but the entire point of the profession. Adrian called the next day, as promised, and most days after that, and it took 3 months before either of them called it anything other than what it was. Two people getting to know each other slowly, on purpose, with a boy at the kitchen table doing long division, and no patience for people who pretended to know things they didn't. 4 months later, Malik asked Naomi again about the ring on the chain, and this time she didn't deflect. She held it up to the kitchen light where Adrian was drying dishes and pretending not to listen, and told her son the truth about his father. Plainly, Malik turned the ring over twice in his palm before handing it back. Malik considered the ring gravely. "You should get a longer chain for it, so people can see it's important instead of just guessing." Naomi laughed, and across the kitchen Adrian looked up with an expression that had nothing performed in it at all, and nothing about the moment asked anyone in that room to pretend.